Okay, so to clarify what I mean when I say that I dated a narcissist, I'm not saying that I have solid evidence that he is a narcissist, but narcissism definitely defines him pretty accurately. I don't think anybody usually has solid evidence of knowing a narcissist since they never really admit to being a narcissist anyways. But I will say he did admit to having sociopathic tendencies, which it so happens that narcissism is a symptom of. He really kind of messed me up inside. Um, I really wish I could have sensed something was off about him, but I couldn't at the time because when I met him, I was like going through my manic phases. So I was kind of a bit too emotionally unstable to even notice it in the first place. And on top of that, I knew I was very paranoid, so I never really did trust my senses of people anyways. I hadn't dated anybody in years before I met him, so the thought of having a boyfriend sounded kind of exciting and new to me. I always wanted a companion I could trust and turn to, and of course, somebody to love. Last time I had loved anybody, I was in middle school, and that didn't go so well, but I figured I healed enough to try dating again, so I did. The first time we dated, he seemed perfect, and of course, at that time I was a bit manic, so I was a little bit, well, horny. So, of course, that made me even more attracted to him. Then one day he came up to me and said that his parents went through his phone and saw our messages and wanted us to break up, which is funny because we never really sent any nudes or said anything that inappropriate, so I was slightly confused about it. I, of course, eventually chalked it up to them just being more on the proper side. I, of course, then decided to tell him that he should delete our messages on Snapchat before his parents see those, since I knew if they had a problem with our messages on Messenger, then he should know at least that they would probably have problems with the ones on Snapchat, because I knew they would try to get us to break up again. And of course, he kept on refusing to delete them, making little excuses like, oh, I need them to remember what we talked about, or like for memories. And I'm like, dude, what matters more, the memory or the real thing, aka me? But he just kept refusing. And of course, a couple days later, he broke up with me because, like I said, like I told him, his parents looked through the Snapchat messages and they disagreed. But, like, this gets really sketchy because, like, while I was crying, he immediately left me there while I was crying to tell all of his friends that we were no longer together anymore. And he seemed to not be that sad about it. And then it gets super sketchy when the very next day I find out he's dating somebody completely new. So, those are pretty gigantic, obvious signs that any girl would have noticed right away, but did I? No, I don't even know how I didn't pick up on those. So, anyways, about half a year later, he hit me up on Snapchat and we talked for a while and eventually decided to start hanging out. After a while of hanging out, he then asked me to date him again. And of course, at that time, I was thrilled because he was on my mind for a long time and I was in kind of a deep depression and was kind of desperate to have somebody to bring me out of the misery I was in. You know, somebody to distract me. Plus, he was somebody I was familiar with, so I felt comfortable with him. He seemed to be just what I needed, or so I thought. So we went out to random places, mainly the mall, and then my birthday came up. So me and him went to Best Buy in the mall, and he bought a lot of stuff. But here's the kicker. All the stuff that he bought was for himself. He did get me one thing though, and it was a $3 pop socket that didn't even work. I should mention that a couple months before it was his birthday and I got him a $50 bike chain bracelet. I mean, I should have broken up with him on my birthday when he did that. I should have been clear to me where his mind was at, and it was always on himself. Even his mom got onto him. I mean, if your boyfriend doesn't get you anything for your birthday, and I don't care how much money is spent, hell, he could have just made me a card or something, and I would have been happy with it. If your boyfriend goes on a shopping spree for himself on your birthday and gets you like zilch, drop him. Like, dang, you are worth so much more than that. I didn't realize my worth back then because I was in a very dark place mentally. I literally thought that was the best I could get. No, sweetie, that's the worst you could get. Anyways, I continued dating him and things are going well other than the whole birthday thing. Then I had to move out of state. He told me he could like totally handle doing long distance relationships, so we both agreed to continue dating and go into long distance. Not too long after I moved, he kind of started acting sketchy and he began ignoring me and avoiding me. And he would even sometimes like snap at me for really small things. And then I let it go on for a while hoping it would pass, but it only got worse, of course. I eventually had a meltdown and told one of our mutual friends what was going on and asked me if she had any idea why he was being this way. She said she thought that I knew that he got rejected by another girl when he asked her to homecoming, but it became obvious to her that I had no idea and that he did not tell me about it like he said he would. So basically she went and told him to get his ASS over here and talk to me. That's obviously when I should have once again broke up with him, but alas, I didn't. I told him how I felt, and he told me about this girl and admitted that he had a crush on her and that he was asking her to homecoming and was really heartbroken when she rejected him, and that's why he was being the way he was with me. Which I should have obviously seen at the time that he clearly doesn't know how to handle long-distance relationships, or relationships in general, if he's gonna like, the moment that I'm far away and unavailable, go right after chasing after a bunch of other girls. But I still decided to stay with him because I thought I shouldn't punish him for being honest, which, looking back, I obviously know now it wouldn't have been punishment for honesty, but for dishonesty or not telling me what was going on in the first place. And, well, looking at other girls and basically cheating on me. Anyways, he said he wouldn't do it again, and little naive me believed him. Things got better for a while, and then they slowly and gradually became worse. He started ignoring me again. He would randomly disappear and not answer my texts, yet clearly still be online. He would start talking about other girls that were his so-called friends, and he was practically glued to his phone. He acted very sketchy about his messages, always muting himself whenever he got a voicemail or sent a voicemail. He was always talking about how amazing these other girls were, but would never introduce me to them. And whenever he got in a call with a girl and wouldn't talk to me for hours on end, and I would ask why, and she wouldn't let him talk to me, he would usually say that most of the time he said that it was because she would kill herself if I left her and I can't leave her, so da-da-da. Which, I mean, that freaked me out at first, but now I kind of realize that he was probably lying. I will probably never know, and I probably don't want to know what was really going on with him and those random girls that he would ditch me for. So, as things progressed, he would get meaner and meaner. He would snap at me more frequently, and I was scared to disagree on anything with him because every time I did, even on small disagreements, he would get mad and start telling me why I'm wrong and he's right. And he got more and more noticeably involved with other girls, especially if I was unavailable for a day or two due to family visits. I would call him back up and he was always busy talking to other girls for the next 5 days. And I mean completely new girls he would meet off the internet. Now thinking back, I do remember him saying that he was on a dating site on Facebook, but again, I didn't think of that thing. Like, I didn't think anything of it at the time. And he did say it quite a while before any of that, though, so I didn't remember that little detail. One day, though, sometime after my family visit, he snapped at me again for texting him while he was at a family visit. He told me to F off after I asked where he was and why he wasn't replying to me. He then told me he was at a family visit and said that he told me that, and now I knew for a fact he didn't tell me that. So for once I was actually sure of my senses and what I remembered. I for once in a long time hadn't doubted myself. So I finally stood up for myself. We got into a big argument where he was basically mad at me for not knowing something that he never told me, and he kept on trying to get me to second guess myself, but I wouldn't let him get away with it this time, like I did so many times before. There was no reasoning with him, though, of course. I knew towards the end of the argument that it was pointless. He was not going to take the blame for not letting me know. He wouldn't be talking to me for the next 2 days. I knew would never take blame for anything he ever did and would continue to play victim in everything, acting as if everything is my fault and that I should be ashamed of myself for trying to figure out why he suddenly stopped talking to me, but was still posting on Facebook and also had time to apparently tell all of his exes off, because that's what he told me he was doing all day. That day, I finally opened my eyes to the nasty human being that I was dating. I've been in denial for so long. I knew deep down that he was a monster, but didn't want to accept that somebody I cared and loved so deeply that never felt the same way for me. I broke up with him the next day in my new realization and was finally free. So, some advice I have for you guys is try not to get so attached to somebody until like 6 months at least in the relationship. I went and got attached way too quickly, but usually after 6 months they start to show their true colors. Also, as hard as it is to accept, if somebody you love hurts you, please get out before you even think about giving them a second chance, because if they hurt you once, then 9 times out of 10 they would do it again. And nobody that hurts you should get a second chance. Don't give self-absorbed, insensitive little twats like them a second chance. And quit making up excuses for them as well. So please don't try and take the seemingly easier route and deny things until everything gets way too out of hand, because it's harder to heal from something that you let get worse than something you stop before things get too serious. Learn to look out for yourself first before anybody else, especially when you are in a relationship with somebody who may be toxic. And better yet, try not to date somebody before you really get to know them. See how he or she treated their exes. How have you been warned by multiple people about this boy or girl, you have to stay vigilant in the dating world because things can go to hell if you're not careful. Believe me. Anyways, I hope my story helps make people try to be more careful with who they date and give them courage to stand up for themselves because, guys, you deserve so much more than you think you do, and don't let anybody try to tell you otherwise.